right. Just gonna scoot this a little bit closer. Oh, boy. Hello. I'm talking to a computer right now that will hopefully turn into me talking to whoever's watching at this very moment. YouTube's weird. Object impermanence is a thing. Uh, I'm Alan. It's very nice to introduce myself to you. If you've been to my channel, you've seen me do epilepsy vlogs and comedy and weird edit things. This is going to be something different. I started this project with an offhand tweet, a random, I'd like to talk to certain people who are making media about their process and what goes into it and who they might be working with. What the effects of making that media has on them and their lives, because nothing happens in a vacuum. And DemonMama just hopped on it, and I'm eternally grateful for that. Her enthusiasm is very, 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 very refreshing. But this was also spurred on by just absorbing more Twitch political media and more YouTube political media and more media period, I guess. Oh wow, it's a week after or 2 weeks after the 4th of July and people are still shooting off fireworks. Cool. And noticing that while there are interesting debates happening, there's not much understanding happening. And I don't mean like reaching across the aisle, but just walking away from that interaction with having some form of insight. So what I'm hoping to do with this guerrilla podcast is give people a better understanding of content creation and the creators behind it. Because in this particular instance, and in, I suspect, many, many more, content creation is a group effort. It's not just the person in front of the camera. I would bet, and I would be 100% sure, at least in this interview, that there is a lot of effort going on that's spread between many hands. So that's that. It's like the thumbnail, but it's worse. um, but basically, my deal is that I've started to get basically absorbing this kind of Twitch debate sphere,
Mm-hmm.
and I've witnessed a couple of things that are interesting, but also a little bit unsettling. Um, and I figured, like, who better to talk to than somebody whose name is Shutterdat whenever they are mentioned on a panel.
It's true.
Um,
People
uh,
are fear my appearance apparently. So
Yeah, it is something that I've witnessed, and that's something we're going to get into. But essentially, I had this idea of one thing I would like to see a lot more online is genuine conversations,
hmm
just conversations about things that are happening. And I'm very interested in meta narrative myself.
hell yeah.
Um, and this is kind of my attempt to kind of spur on that idea. And I made a tweet the other day that was just basically, I would love to talk about blank with certain people,
Hell yeah.
and you jumped on that string on that on that tweet faster than anybody, and I was like,
Hundo
holy,
percent.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
because you're
amazing,
great.
yeah.
You're great. And I'm very happy to get to talk to you. I was very excited to hear that you were looking to do that. And I am more than happy to get to jump on it. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, and I just really appreciate that enthusiasm.
No problem.
I guess what we're gonna do tonight is just a basic interview format. It's gonna start off very bland. And then we're going to go into some of the more interesting aspects of debate culture that I've witnessed and the misogyny and the gladiatorial kind of blood sports aspect of it. And I just wanted to get someone's opinion who has been in the thick of it.
Hell yeah.
Uh, yeah.
I have a lot of opinions, so you're
Well,
gonna get what
I
you might get a monkey's paw, in that I might give you too many opinions.
you know what? I'm excited with magical items. I play
Hell yeah.
D&D avidly, and I love a double-edged sword. So, what do
Hell
you say we
yeah.
get started?
Let's do it. Let's do it right away.
All right. First and foremost, because I am going to be putting this on my own channel,
Absolutely.
for people who do not know who you are, would you like to introduce yourself and give a little bit of background to what it is you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, my name is DemonMama. I sort of brand myself as a political edutainer. Here on YouTube, I do a pretty wide variety of content. I cover the news from time to time. Usually looking for specific articles that I think are relevant to my community. My community is predominantly LGBTQ plus, and so I talk about a lot about news issues regarding LGBTQ rights, and a bunch of other things as well. I also do lots of debates. For a long time, I was kind of most known for my debate panel appearances, although that's actually changing now, as I do more original content and less like panel debates. I still do lots of debates. I still have a lot of fun with debate. Yeah, I try to talk about a lot of like lefty politics, a lot of queer politics, a lot of racial politics, without like this sort of like I don't know, facade of being like the answer to all of the problems. I just want to run a show that gets people's brain juices flowing in the right direction, because I strongly, strongly believe in the power of education. I strongly, strongly believe in the power of conversation. Also, I just think that getting people access to information they didn't have access to before can really change the world. And that's really what I want to do. I don't know if I'll change the world, but I certainly have a lot of fun making the show. And I try to, my goal every day, I say this on my stream a lot, is every time somebody comes to my stream, I want them to learn one thing and laugh at least once. And if I do that, then I am succeeding, is the way that I look at it. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's very cool. You know, two things about that statement really stick out to me, and the first one is the term edutainment. I
Mm-hmm.
love that term. And I've been meaning to ask you this for a while, but how do you find that you thread the needle between education and entertainment? Because I find as a comedian that can be very difficult. Do you find that that's like, how do you thread that needle?
I think it can be hard at certain times. There are certainly times where you're talking on an issue, and it is hard to know which which area you're on. And sometimes you tip from one way over into the entertainment, and sometimes you tip over into the education. My History Mama segments tend to be very on the education side, whereas my Drama Mama segments tend to be very much on the entertainment side. It can be a little hard, but for me, what's important is not having an illusion of like self-seriousness. I jokingly, there's a very famous clip out there of me shouting at a well-known debate bro that I was debating with, who I'm a big fan of. And I said, "What am I? A jester to you?" And I said that as a joke, because in truth, I am. I see myself as a bit of a clown. But I think that I think that's important. I think it's important that that content creators don't sell themselves as something that they're not. I am an entertainer. Yes, you can learn something from me, just like you can learn tons of things from movies. Art is valuable, and it being a presentation, a piece of entertainment, doesn't make it less valuable. It just makes it different. And I think something that we see a lot of times in political spaces, especially, is this sort of God, how do I say it? There is an attempt to sort of there's extremely explicit ones where people are literally like, join the revolution today for $9.99 on my Patreon. We see that. We've seen that literally. We've covered that on this show.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
but there's also more like subtle or implicit ways in which people sort of misrepresent what they're doing. And I really try to make sure that it's preeminent, that people know what they're getting, that they're not being sold something that's different than what it is that they're being given. I make a show. I am entertaining. I'm not always going to be 100% correct on everything. I will do my best always, but I am still a human. And I remind people of that frequently. And that is, to me, how I, at least for the time being, best keep that balance going, by maintaining a sort of passive aura of hey, remember, this is just a show. And it's kind of like, I don't know, are you familiar with Penn and Teller, the magicians?
Absolutely, yeah. I got to meet one of them in Jacksonville while
Super
performing.
cool. I also got to meet. I met Penn Jillette. It was a
Yeah,
big thing. It's super cool. But when I went and saw them in Vegas at the beginning of their show, they sort of do this disclaimer at the beginning that's like, "Hey, everything that you see here is a ingeniously devised trick. There is no supernatural action going on here." And that should make you even more excited about what we're about to show you. And that's the way that I approach it as well, which is that I want my show to be exciting and interesting and emotionally engaging without ever misleading people as to what's going on. I don't want people to misinterpret and think that I am like the one-stop shop for all of their historical information or political opinions. I do not want that. I want people to think and grow. I want to be a catalyst that helps people grow. So I see that sort of disclaimer as something that I do frequently. You've probably, if I know you've watched my show at times, you've probably heard me say this sort of thing on air, and I say it very frequently, often when I'm doing other pitches. You know what I mean? Like if I'm like, hey, if you could like and subscribe, and also those who are listening to it now, you should like and subscribe to Just Alan, and also me if you want to, but it's more about Just Alan here. But I always say that in coordination with, like, this is a show that is meant to teach you and entertain you. And if you can support us, that's great. We are always viewer supported. And I try to do that because, I don't know, maybe it's a dose of humility that I think is necessary. But that's what I aim to do.
yeah, absolutely. You kind of answered the second half of what I was going to say in what you just said. I was going to say the other thing that sticks out about about you to me is that you you leave a long bit of space for being wrong, and you don't make it a bad thing. And I think that's very admirable, especially amongst streamers nowadays and people who take on these political positions where they've
Mhm.
I feel like a lot of people feel like they need to kind of be infallible within their positions. What I admire about you is you put more of a spotlight on growth, which I think is important nowadays.
I
So
try to. I do try to. I mean, some of that is from my background, which, obviously, if people want to jump into that, they can go watch my my sort of most work of most pride, which is my DemonMama spiritual deconstruction, where I talk about my sort of ideological history, where I came from. I grew up in a cult, and so for me, I have had this journey of leaving something that was very rigid and full of indoctrination, and changing and having to really, like, on a very radical level, rethink most of my views. And so I guess that's my approach, is that, like, I see the story of my life as one of growth, and I want to encourage that in other people. And yeah. And I think it's a complicated discussion. So I appreciate that you mentioned that. It is something that I do actively try to curate in my work.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you brought that up because that's a lovely segue into our next question,
Excellent.
which is let's dig into a little bit. We've talked about your process and how you feel when you do, like, what your thought process is when you're doing your job.
Hmm.
Let's talk about the lore of Demon Mama and her imp army, and
Yeah.
getting the obvious question out of the way. What motivated you to start streaming?
So it's always hard to pin down motivations exactly, but I was a big fan of a streamer that many people, I'm sure, will know, named Vosh. And Vosh kind of
Mhm.
blew up out of nowhere. I'd been following him for a very long time. And by sort of a strange series of chances, I ended up like leaving the place that I was in 2 years ago that I lived in, which was like super non-conducive to being able to make anything. It was and was able to get out of there. And when I had this new space, I was like, well, I'm in a new place. I have an opportunity to try some new things. And I'm like, I've been watching all these streams, not just Vosh, but many other people. I had started watching a lot of other politics content creators, and I had been very inspired by them. Including, Chud Logic. There's a streamer a lot of people know called Bad Bunny. These were some of the people early on who really inspired me. And of course, I should say that even before any of these other streamers, I was a huge fan of The Majority Report, with Sam Cedar and Michael Brooks, these sort of radio style shows. And many people probably noticed that there's a lot of radio-ish things that I do on my show, which I really like. That's part of one of the things I love. I love that influence is a part of my work as well, and I gladly embrace that. But yeah, those sort of things inspired me, and seeing what I gained from them was hugely inspirational to me, because I felt like these types of shows that were entertaining could be listened to while I was doing other things, while I was working, while I was doing whatever. They gave me room to think about things from many different perspectives, and provided and gave me links to information that I wouldn't have found any other way. And I realized, like, wow, well, I could do something like that. And I actually ended up going to a big political rally, which was at that time in my life, a pretty major step for me. I had been sort of in a long depressive chapter of my life where I was dealing with a lot of stuff, and I decided to kind of like get motivated and work up the energy to go to this big event. And while I was there was a sort of impromptu meetup with Vosh and a bunch of the fans of the local fans of his show. And I went there and I had a really, really good time. And at the end of it, I was like, hey, I've been thinking about making a show, and here's my idea for it. What do you think about that? And, he kind of just said, you should go for it. We really need more people who are going to tackle politics in a way that's like palatable and understandable to internet people, which is everybody these days, it seems like. And so that's where I was like, okay, all right, I'm going to put this together. And then so over the course of like a month, I sat down and like basically every day I was just thinking about like, okay, what do I want to do? What do I want my image to be? What are my goals? What are my foundations? Some of the documents that I drafted during that time are still like part and parcel of the server. Or of my work, not just my server, but on the Discord server, for example, the foundations, which is in the rules page, a page that lots of people don't read, but should. There is a sort of
read the rules.
Yeah,
please.
I mean, I can. It's a bit long, but sure, I can.
No, not you now. I'm saying people that are joining Discord.
Okay. I was gonna say I could read the opening. I actually think the opening is relatively concise and would give a good example of something that I was working on at the time. If you're,
I would actually love to hear it. Yeah, I love hearing about the conception of this character that you've created. So yeah, absolutely.
Real quick, allow me to pause for just 1 second. Hannah Reloaded and the Hannah Reloaded community, all 300 of you, thank you so very much for joining us right now. We are incredibly happy to have you. You have come in at a very good time. If you're new to my channel, I am being interviewed right now by Just Alan, and we are delving into the depths of DemonMama lore, where I came up with the ideas, how I make my show, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So if you're here, come get comfy. Please consider joining the website, demonmama.com/live, where you get access to all of my emotes free. You can sign in with your Twitch and come hang out with the other imps. Imps are my fans. And we would love to have you. You're going to get a super treat with this interview. So far, it's been wonderful, and I'm very, very happy to have you all. We're going to be doing a lot of fun stuff afterwards, so come on and get comfy. You'll be entertained for hours, I promise. Thank you so much for the raid, Hannah, and welcome to all the Hannah Reloaded fans. Very happy to have you here. You can of course cut that out of the final version if you so desire.
Oh, not at all. I love your promotional material. It reminds me of old '90s professional wrestling.
Well, I'm a big fan of professional wrestling. So some of it is there's a mixture of that, and a lot of my sort of welcomes and this show is supported by viewers like yourself. That is like a lot of PBS and NPR influence. So what we were going to do right before the raid happened was I was just going to read off the foundations of my server, which was drafted during this period where I was trying to figure out before I launched my channel, like what I wanted to do with my channel. And I thought that would be interesting as an insight. Are you cool if I just read that right now?
Absolutely. I would love that.
Excellent. Okay. So this is on my rules page on my server, and there have been changes to the rules, but I have not made changes to the foundations yet. I will probably draft an upgraded version at some point. But here's how it goes. This server is being constructed on a foundation of mutual growth to serve as an extension of DemonMama's political presence online and beyond. We are all here because of our interest, from one angle or another, in politics and leftism. Here, together, we will build a community devoted to helping one another grow intellectually, politically, materially, inasmuch as is possible with one individual's channel community. Contention is encouraged, disagreement is natural. However, behavior that violates the spirit of mutual growth will not be tolerated. This server stands in opposition to deleterious, antisocial, anti-intellectual, and anti-human behavior. Prejudice and blind hatred stand in direct opposition to the spirit of this server. The rules here may evolve over time as needed to serve the spirit of the server, the community at large, and the server's ultimate role in DemonMama's political work. This space is being built to be effective, which means modifications to the rules may occur if the server is failing to live up to its purpose as a space of learning, growth, and organization. And that was the foundations that I drafted during that time. And I have found that these sort of foundations have guided me well and guided our server well. And I think it's important to do that because I think a lot of times people sort of jump into content creation and maybe they luck into a break, which happens to a lot of us. But then they don't necessarily know exactly what they're going to do, or they don't have any even framework for what they want to do. And it can be really overwhelming and it can leave you feeling very lost. But for me, I have these sort of foundations to fall back on and go, okay, this is what we're trying to accomplish. When there's a hard moment, we can fall back on this and take a look at these foundations for what we want to do in the future.
Right.
Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It does. Like, I found that even in what I do in live performance, like having a modus operandi
Yeah.
is very important. I found that like new comedians, when they first start going in, they just want to start doing the most subversive material, the hardest jokes to get across to an audience. They want to be, they want to go up and they want to do like George Carlin shit, And the thing I'm always telling them is you should worry about, you are an entertainer first and foremost. Like, you should worry about entertaining the audience and learning how to write a joke and deliver it well before going into that subversive kind of storytelling and joke writing. And I think it's, like I said, it's very important to have that framework. And I love the framework that you lay out of mutual growth. And I love the sentence, or not the sentence, the word anti-human behavior. That is such a succinct way of putting such a succinct way of saying things like prejudice and bigotry, I think
I spent a lot
of
time like thinking about that specific wording too, because I didn't want people in the setting of the foundations. I didn't want myself or others to sort of just fall on buzzwords that can, sort of lose their meaning over time. I wanted to have something that really expressed the sentiment that I was going for. So that's why I chose those words. I'm glad that it's meaningful to other people as well.
Absolutely. It's Mary Shelley levels of precise is what my language arts teacher would have said.
Oh, thank
you. How did you come up with this DemonMama character, this very boisterous and entertaining kind of persona that you have for streaming?
So there's an interesting backstory to this that I'll tell. Some of the imps are going to groan because they've heard it so many times, but you can deal with it. The DemonMama, like the name DemonMama there's two places where it comes from. The first part, when I first came out as trans, I was sort of outed to my family, and there was this whole drama because I was also grappling with religion, which was the way that my life went, religion and gender were just intertwined. You couldn't they were impossible to separate. All of my family's views came from this religion. And there was this one like family party that I went to, and it was very common. It was a very common occurrence at my family parties to argue about stuff. But most of the people in my family fell within like the right spectrum. And so when I started being basically the only person with a progressive or left bent, it really ruffled some feathers. And at one point there was this sort of really stark memory I have of sitting at my grandma's dinner table with 5 people on the other side and me by myself on the one end of the table and 5 people on the other. And my aunt was really mad and was like, I really can't help but feel that like Satan probably sent you to test our faith. And because I knew the Bible so well, like I genuinely was an amateur scholar of the Bible at the time. And that made me laugh really hard at the time. And so I, after that, had this sort of attachment to like a lot of demonic imagery because I had been, and it wasn't the only time that happened. That happened multiple times, but it was the most stark one. And after that moment, I remember really being like, you know what? I think I'm going to just like embrace it and say, you know what? Fine, I'm a demon. And then the mama part is, well, I was the oldest kid in my family. And I literally raised, like to a major degree, a lot of my siblings when I was younger, like multiple of my siblings. I had a huge family, and my mom was busy. My mom wasn't super rich or anything. So I spent a lot of time taking care of my siblings. And so as a result, I kind of just have this passive mom energy. And I also, at some point, like 2 or 3 years ago, I said, I was having like this, I think I was like 27 and I'm like, oh my God, I'm getting old. That stupid thing that you do when you're like in your late 20s. Yeah. And it's like, and I was like, oh no, what is this? And then I was just kind of like, you know what? Maybe I should just embrace being like a momish person. Like I can just embrace it. And so I started going by, at the time I went by a different username, but it was always mama stuff. And then now it's DemonMama, and that stuck. So I put those two together, and that made the DemonMama thing. As far as like my on-screen persona, I am, and people who know me IRL will tell you that I am very, very loud and boisterous and whatever IRL. That's just who I am. And of course,
we've spoken privately, and it's always entertaining.
Yeah, most people who've spoken to me off screen know that there's a lot of me in DemonMama, so to say. Yeah. Those lines are very blurred to the degree that I spent time like sort of, after every stream just vibing and like decompressing, because there is a lot of personal engagement there that can be really hard to deal with. But obviously there is an element of performance in all things. And I just kind of, I don't know. I try not to take myself too seriously, and I let myself be as honest and real as I can be. Without like damaging myself. Obviously, there are some things that you cannot like, that you really shouldn't like share with the world at all times, because it can be used against you in a lot of bad ways. But for the most part, I really I follow the idea of wearing it like your armor. I am openly queer. I am openly trans. I am openly argumentative and opinionated. And I'm not ashamed of that, or I try not to be. Yeah. There are times where I do, and I think everybody deals with that. Of course, there are times where I struggle. And obviously I've been pretty open about some of my mental health struggles as well, which is a big part of that. Self-doubt and whatnot is a huge part of my personal mental health struggles. And we can talk about that later if we want to, or whatever, but, sure. Yeah, so those are sort of the thing. As far as the imps, the DemonMama thing, it was a perfect matchup to just be like, all right, imps, come on. They're little demons. Yep. And the cool thing about imps is they're very mischievous. They don't always do what they're told, and I am okay with that. I would prefer to have a bunch of troublemaking, free-thinking, if sometimes a little bit obnoxious imps than a bunch of drones or whatever. So the imps are they're my imps, and I try to do my best to be a sort of internet non-parasocial as possible internet mama for them, and make a safe space and take good care of them to the best of my ability. Yeah,
Yeah,
so that's where it comes from.
absolutely. Like I've personally found that content creators, I almost hate to say fans, more content creators communities, the members that kind of go to their content. Fans, I guess, is actually a good, perfect word for it.
Yeah.
They're usually a mirror of the content that that person is creating, and you've cultivated a very fun and admittedly chaotic fan base.
True, true. That's true.
Um, do you find that corralling your imps from segment to segment is a bit like corralling cats, or do you find that once you lay your foot down, they're willing to listen to you?
I mean, there's definitely times. There have been times where I've been like exasperated, but honestly,
Hmm.
dealing with them is nothing like the things I've dealt with in the past. I have dealt with actual like screaming children that when I was babysitting my entire family or whatever. So and of course, on top of all of that, I've dealt with wrangling my own ridiculous ADHD ridden brain, which is
Right.
often very disobedient and usually gets me distracted more than anybody else could. So all in all, it's a good match. I am a good person to be wrangling these chaotic creatures.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
You mentioned meeting Vosh at a rally
Hmm.
before. And I'm wondering, how do you set yourself apart from more visible streamers like Hassan or Vosh, for example?
Well, I mean, there are some like sort of loose similarities between me and Vosh's content. That is like gone down a lot. Like when I first started, my show was a lot more similar to his old show, where he did a lot of
Mm.
news coverage and reacting to that, and then like debunking conservatives and stuff. And I still do some of that. The conservative react stuff I still love, and whatever. But like sort of off the get go, I just kind of decided that there were my own things that I really wanted to do. There were things that these content creators didn't do that I wanted to do. Things like History Mama, things like Cooking Mama, that were like, this is a thing that I'm interested in, that I'm interested in giving it its own identity and having it be something that people can understand. And so those are some of the things. I mean, Drama Mama right now is one of the things that sets me apart from, I think, almost the entire like online streaming, left streaming sphere, the extended sphere. There's nobody that I can think of that does like deep dive drama stuff like I do in the same way. A lot of people talk about drama. A lot of people mention drama. A lot of people get involved in drama, but very few
Mhm.
people do a sort of procedural, let's go through, let's catch everybody into the loop, at least in the online left space. And so I'm very excited about that. Drama Mama was something that I started doing quite a long time ago, but I've formalized and made it more of a part of my brand, or whatever you want to call it, my image, my persona, over time, because I think it stands out. And I would love to see my Drama Mamas influence other people, because I think I do some good things with Drama Mama. It can be hard sometimes. There is,
Mhm.
especially because like I have, of course, been involved in my own dramas, as many people here will know,
Yeah.
um, and some of those can have a really detrimental influence on how you're perceived. Like for example, there was this for a very long time, and this has waned quite a lot. But there was this long period of time where it seemed like everyone on the internet was calling me like a Vosh clone. And I'm like, I don't even
Yeah.
do that similar content. The only thing that we really have major overlap on is like React. But come on, everybody does React. That's like that if you want to call me a clone for doing React content, what? Like, okay. And then secondly was debates. And yes, I will say I was of course very influenced by Vosh with regard to debates, but it's wild that like, because some people came in contact with me via like a debate with their favorite person, that they saw that and took that and projected that over my entire content without ever actually looking at what I actually make. And it was very
Mhm.
funny early on because people are like, oh, you're like your channel's like a 1-for-1 clone of Vosh or whatever. And I'm like, really? Like, can you go look at my segments? Like, my channel is very different. We have a very different image. We do very different content. Like, the way that I approach my content is very different. And
Mhm.
so it was something that made me realize that like sometimes it can be hard to differentiate your image because it's out of your control sometimes. And Yeah. I mean, one of the somebody in the chat here, wall panel, brings up the time when I was told that like I smiled at the camera and that was Vosh like, and I'm like, wait, what? Like, if anything, you could say I was like Jim from The Office. Like Vosh, like
Right.
invented smiling. It was really funny. That made me laugh like really, really, really hard. And yeah, so it was. Yeah, so there's been a lot of stuff like that. I find it a little bit hard,
Yeah.
but I imagine that the longer that I go at it, the more of a independent identity I have. Another thing that I did, another thing that I did that was very deliberate, that I think a lot of people don't really notice or know because I don't expect that they would. But I specifically, especially early on, I would not bend my streaming schedule around other content creators. A lot of starting content creators won't stream at the same time as their favorite content creator because they want to be able to grab some of the audience from that content creator that they are like might be known in. I'm relatively well known in Vosh's chat, for example. But
Hmm.
I didn't do that. I streamed when I wanted to stream because it was important for me to develop a independent image and an independent audience, regardless of who was streaming at the time. And that was a
Right.
very, very very deliberate thing that I have kept doing to this day, and I'm very happy that I did because as a result, I can now enjoy. Anytime I go live, people come to see me. They don't come over because somebody else is off at that moment. There are, of course, some people. There's some overlap, but the vast
Right.
majority of people come here to see my show, and that
Yeah.
is super, super, super exciting. For me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You talked a bit about people comparing you to Vosh,
Hmm.
and that strikes me as very interesting because uh, a lot of people nowadays talk about like debate culture as if it's sprung out of the ether because of an April Fool's joke gone awry. Um, when in reality, people who have been watching the Majority Report and the Michael Brooks show, they've been seeing debates for years. Um, People who have watched Politicon and stuff like
Of
that.
course, yeah.
Do you think that do you think that maybe that public perception is out there because people like Vosh and Hassan and admittedly Destiny made it more popular? They were just the more visible streamers of the time. Because I do think a lot of people forget the illustrious history that debate culture has on the internet.
Oh yeah, I mean, we can even talk about pre-internet. I made a joke about it in the History Mama segment we did just before this interview, about Magnus Hirschfeld arguing with anthropologists in 1910 over various theories of sexuality, and it's like yes, the lefties engaged in debate bro culture as early as the 1910s, and no, but I
Right.
mean, like, of course, like I have a bit of a unique insight in that I'm 30,
Hmm.
and as a result of that, like grew up on talk radio. I remember loving it when a caller would come in all aggressive and hot and get blown the fuck out by whoever was running the radio show or whatever. And so that sort of debate shit was not only was it a part of my family. My family always debated about random crap, but also it's like, I don't know. I think the thing is, like, streaming is new. Streaming is still very much in its infancy. And
Hmm.
as a result, like, there's a couple of big figures that people tend to associate things with, and that's not really necessarily accurate. And those people have influences that may not be recognized that are outside of streaming. People tend to think that, like, this type of debate was invented by X person. Not even close. I mean,
Yeah.
and even for people online, those of us who are slightly older than like the Zoomers, a lot of the millennials will remember the like popularity of like atheist debates on YouTube. That was a huge thing for a while,
Oh
and
yeah.
that was the same shit, just slightly different structure. So
Hmm.
I think there is a bit of a perception issue that will change over time as more and more people realize that like debate has been around for literally thousands upon thousands of years. It's a part of humanity, and just because you put it on a stream doesn't mean that you invented the actual techniques that are involved.
100%. Yeah. Yeah, I just think it's funny because people talk about it as if it's some brand new thing, and it's like people have been debating since the times of Aristotle, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, before that even. I mean, I know, oh man, what I wouldn't give to see an argument between like early cave hominids. See what they're
Oh
fighting
yeah.
about. I was going to draw the bear on the wall, and you copied me and drew a bear on the wall as well.
So, I think the tusk on that woolly mammoth is a little bit crooked. Like,
Yeah. What a fool. Look at how you drew that tusk.
That's
Cringe.
not how
Cringe,
you start a fire. Yeah.
cringe fire starting methods, bro.
Yeah, that's very funny. You also talked a lot about Drama Mama, and
Yeah.
I think the Drama Mama segment is very interesting because it's something that like Lance of the Surfs has a
Love
drama
Lance.
segment,
Uh-huh.
and it's very surface level. It's a very much an intro to essentially what you do.
Uh-huh.
And I found that a really interesting thing because of the upload schedule of streamers is that I'll be able to watch Lance's intro to what you're talking about and then catch yours
Hell
like
yeah.
minutes later. Like the Jimmy Dore situation was a perfect example of this in my mind, and I really appreciate how you take the time to really add context to what's going on. You do a veritable deep dive into people's Twitters and personal histories. And do you find that that takes an inordinate amount of preparation, or is it something that you're just happy to do on the fly on stream?
It depends. I do more prep than a lot of streamers do. That's for sure. I've
Hmm.
come to find that that's true. A lot of streamers just turn on their stream and they have a vague idea of what they're going to do. I almost with very few exceptions, when I'm having like just a fun day where we're just going to do live react or memes or something like that, I won't have a prep, but I always do an outline for my stream. It really helps me organize my brain. And I will get all my links together and I'll make sure I'm not, to the best of my ability, not missing things. Of course, it always happens. It's impossible with internet drama to not miss some details. But I do a lot of prep and research for that sort of thing. I don't find it particularly exhausting. For some things, it's hard. For example, one of my drama mamas, which was on the I Stand with Ray Fisher, a big DC Comics, huge pop culture drama that was super juicy, super, super juicy. If you all haven't seen that, go look up that drama mama because I am so proud of that. That was like one of the juiciest dramas we ever touched. Unfortunately, my channel was smaller then, so it doesn't have as many views. But that one took a lot of research. That was, in fact, around the time when I hired on my researcher, Silent, who helps me source the things that we're talking about and get everything organized.
Silent is a great source for comic book knowledge, wrestling knowledge, general history. You have a great resource in. I'm starting to ramble. Sorry,
That's
my
fine. No,
ADD's
that's fine.
kicking in. You have a deep resource in research.
Yeah.
Is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And I mean, I kept my eye out for that. I like to think that one of the things that sort of I've sort of cultivated in myself over the years is recognizing talent and seeing like when somebody when I find somebody who's very good at something and I know sort of the hallmarks to look for, the passion, the motivation, et cetera, I try to make sure that that's put to good use if I can, because I know that there's been times in my life where I could have benefited from that and didn't necessarily have it. I didn't necessarily have somebody who was like, hey, you're pretty good at this. You want to do this for like towards a goal, towards an end. And I try to do that. And thankfully, Silent is somebody who stuck out very quickly to me as somebody who's very passionate. And I'm very, very thankful that they're a part of my team. Because it's made us, it's helped us be able to do some really amazing shows. It is much harder to do, especially for me. It's hard for me to do everything that I have to do for the show, which is an unfathomable amount of work. That's the one thing I should say is like producing the show overall is a lot of work. So yeah, it's wonderful to have that. It's always good to work together with other people, in my opinion, if it's possible.
Absolutely, more hands makes less work. It's a lovely thing.
And makes better work.
Yeah, absolutely. Aside from Drama Mama and History Mama, you do a lot of really fun segments as well, like Cooking with Demon Mama, Holy Mackerel. Um, do you find that these kind of cool downs act as like a palate cleanser for the political content that you often engage with?
Yeah, I think they're not even just a palate cleanser. I think they serve as like an enhancer.
Mm.
Because a lot of times there will be stuff that we've talked about in political segments that becomes immediately relevant in other content. Not so much with Cooking Mama, though sometimes you'd be surprised. But with stuff like Holy Mackerel, there is so much like where that sort of passive political knowledge, or passive, in this case with Holy Mackerel, religious knowledge, can be super, super valuable, and it lets it be enjoyed in a very organic way. So you take this sort of like, hey, here we're going to talk about this specific topic in more of like a classroomy kind of structure, and then here's the fun part where we go get to see it happen in real life. It's like a field trip. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's the way I think of it. It's like, okay, so you did the classwork, and now you're going to the salmon fishery or the salmon hatchery, and you get to go see, okay, so you learned about how salmon jump up the water. Now you go get to see them swimming around in their pools and stuff. That's the way I look at it. I look at it like field trips, basically. And I do think it does help. And you know, with Holy Mac, I think I'm literally the only person who's ever reacted to Holy Mackerel on the internet. And that makes me so happy. I have a theory. I have a growing theory that they know, and that they're going to keep putting references in there, and I hope they do.
I hope so as well. Like when you mentioned the fact that you think of them as field trips, I just got this amazing image in my head of like the Magic School Bus.
Yes, I loved Magic School Bus.
Yeah.
Magic School was a huge influence on me as a kid. So yes, absolutely. You know, it's funny. This is a really weird tangent to go off on, but many, many years ago, when I first left college, because of a whole bunch of stuff that happened, I was asked what my somebody asked me where do I see myself in like 10 years, and I said that this was like a job interview, and I said that my goal was to be a science entertainer at the time, because I was really into science at the time, and I said I cited people like Bill Nye. Who was another person who was really influential to me. And it's funny because I ended up backburnering that for a long time and hadn't really thought about it. And now I look and I'm like, all of a sudden I'm like, wow, I kind of do that. Yeah, I mean, I have to say, you know, the PBS NPR influence on me is huge, and it's probably very visible in my work.
Yeah, I have noticed the moment you said it, it was like a light going off in my head. I was like, oh God, it is like PBS. Wow, I do feel like it's Sunday and I'm sitting in my trailer, you know, with my mom and my dad watching it.
And that's what I love that. I love that. I love I love old school Discovery Channel. I love old school Animal Planet. You know, the Krat brothers and Zaboomafoo and you know, Sesame Street even. Though I you know, Sesame Street was not one that I was super into. I really liked like Wishbone and Magic School Bus and all that stuff when I was younger. And Bill Nye, of course. And Eyewitness. Oh my God, that's something I'm going to play after this if I remember. I got to play the Eyewitness stuff. Eyewitness was huge for me. I don't know if you're familiar with Eyewitness. But yeah.
I'm not. But I am. I love lost media like that. But you mentioned that you dropped out of college and then you were asked this question. I myself, I dropped out of college. I'm 34 and I fell ass first into my performance career.
I know that feeling. I know that feeling. Yep.
I was working door for open mics, and my friend, who was an open mic comic, invited me out and was like, hey, you know, you've been stuck in your apartment for months. You need to get out. Come out to this open mic. And I was like, fine, whatever. And the fucker signed me up.
Oh my God. Sometimes you need a friend like that, though.
Yeah, honestly, that was 7 years ago.
Damn, that's awesome, though.
Yeah, but the question I'm alluding to is like, do you find that it was more helpful for you to discover this performance career rather than maybe preparing for it?
In some ways, yes. In others, no. There was definitely some prep that happened in that I was sort of lucky enough to have a little bit of a period where my freelance writing job was just the build up to the pandemic and changes in the industry were just destroying my ability to work. And so I needed to find something. And I was like, okay, what's my skill set? What do I love? What am I really into? And I was like, well, streaming. I spend a lot of time in people's stream chats while I'm doing other stuff, while I'm doing this like pitiful writing work that just paid less and less and less. It was just getting real bad. And I'm like, why don't I try to do something with this? And so in some ways, yeah, it was helpful to just kind of like fall into it with minimal prep. In other ways, there are ways that I wish that I could have done different things. I mean, I still think that to this day that if I'd been able to complete film school, that I probably would have started off making something, much bigger and more structured and pretty and whatever. But I don't know if it would have had the same impact. I don't know if it would have had the same organic growth. It's very hard to say. At the end of the day, life deals us hands, and we have to play them the best as we can. And, I have always been, blame it on the ADHD, whatever. I've always been a bit of an improviser. And, I say like the dirty rat setup that I had originally, which was like a just totally kludged together mess of my iPhone on like this crappy stand. And I just managed to disguise it to look good enough that like people could enjoy it. But yeah, so I think there's a little bit of both. It's real hard to say, but my advice on that, I guess, or my final statement would be, hey, you play with the hand that you get. If your hand includes a card that gives you a college education, use it. Just do your best. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you thought about going back to your film career at all? Have you thought about maybe making like just an iPhone film? I know those
Yeah.
I've seen tons of films that were filmed on iPhones that are stand up to like literal cinema.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even need to do that now. I have a DSLR and all kinds of stuff. I could probably make a pretty nice looking, I mean, not that iPhone things aren't nice looking, but I could probably make even a more structured film. Maybe someday. Right now, no. Right now, I get all of the points in my brain that were touched by film are touched by streaming, more or less, with a few exceptions. The structure of productions, when they're at their best, is something that I do miss sometimes, but maybe we'll get there someday. If this channel keeps growing, I intend to one day open a studio where I will be able to have other people produce shows in that studio alongside me, that will be able to do more structured segments that have like unique aesthetics to them and whatever, have multi-cameras maybe someday. If this channel keeps growing, then that might be a really cool way for me to touch on that. A lot of my film school skills have indeed come over and are useful here. Lighting, massively useful. What audio knowledge I picked up, massively useful. The knowing focal stuff. There's a lot of stuff that's framing. There's so much stuff that's been helpful. But I don't know. I don't really feel the desire to make like feature films or even short fiction films at the moment. But I might someday. And there's of course the possibility that like in the long run, if streaming isn't it doesn't maintain its viability, which is on the internet always a possibility. Who would have thought that the online job, being an online writer, would someday not be as valuable because Facebook decided to falsify a bunch of research about how good videos do, and so every single publication online switched to video content, and all of a sudden writers were out of work. That could happen for streamers, and if it does, I have alternatives that I could go to, and maybe I will. Maybe I'll become like a bread tuber or do like I don't know, like a Discovery show thing. One thing I would love to do that is in the realm of film, it's a long way off, I acknowledge this. I would need to be, I'll be honest, I'd need to be at least a little bit wealthy for this to happen, which is not where I'm at right now. But I would love to someday do documentaries, like traveling documentaries, where I go travel to a place, I learn about that place, I teach other people about that place. Maybe we do food or nature or those kind of things. I would love to do that someday, but that's not in the books right now.
Yeah, well, that sounds awesome. I hope that comes out for you. That's a really cool idea. I remember watching like Anthony Bourdain back in the day.
Oh, I love Anthony Bourdain.
Love
oh my
that
god,
kind of stuff.
oh my god, I cried.
Yeah.
I cried at his last episode of I'm blanking on the show right now off the top of my head here, but he did his final episode before he died.
Destinations Unknown.
Yeah, and it was in Seattle, and he taught everybody how to roll a joint in Seattle, and that was so. It was like there's this image of him smoking a cigarette at a bar, and just sort of, and there's a mood there. There's a very Pacific Northwest, contemplative, melancholy mood that really stuck with me. And I would love to do that someday. But the reality is that in our current world, you need to be wealthy to do that. And if I ever become wealthy, if the imps ever make me wealthy, I will do this for them. I will open their eyes to whatever I can find. And I used to travel a lot back when I was in my previous career, the only career I've ever actually had. I succeeded in sales for a while. I left the industry because I hated it. By after, I mean, almost immediately, but I powered through because I had to survive. But I was very good at sales, and I made a lot of money in sales. And at that time, I traveled a lot. I traveled all over the United States with basically every bit of extra cash that I got. I would go on a trip, and that was truly a life-changing experience for me. Changed the way that I look at the world. I mean, I don't know. Travel is so important to me, and I would love to do something like that, but it'll be in the future. So
Yeah, absolutely. To reel the conversation back in a little bit, we talked a little bit about your stream team earlier, and
absolutely.
you've described your stream team and your mod team as a collective or a streaming co-op. This is another thing that drew me to your content. How does that work? Like, what are some of the difficulties and some of the joys for working towards a streamer co-op?
Oh, okay. So so my streamer co-op is what I call a functional co-op because of the
Right.
way that that American business law works. It's really messy, but the way that I
Yeah.
do it is I am my company right now. And of course that is going to change in the future. But what I do is I pay people contract rates based on the percentages of income that I get from this channel. And that's not the best way to structure it, but right now I'm in the process of locating a lawyer once I get a little bit more money put away, and we'll probably formulate into a formal co-op. But right now, every person who's a part of my team, I decided this from the get-go that if somebody's going to be a part of the team, they get a percentage of whatever they're working on. So all of my team members have some percentage holding, with one exception, which is my TikTok editor, and that's because TikTok is not monetized. So that person is paid a flat rate because that is literally fairer than giving them a percentage. But when we do monetize our TikTok, and if we are unable to monetize TikTok, if we move into another short format, then they will have a percentage stake in that. And the reason why I do that is because, first of all, you probably saw my rant about not being a work cuck, which is basically don't do things if you're not being paid for it, or if you're not being compensated for it. Obviously, sometimes pay doesn't work out. Sometimes you do a volunteer project that you should have some sort of stake in. And I very much believe in that. And interestingly, you say, what are the difficulties? There aren't really. I wouldn't say there's many difficulties at all. The difficulty, I think that the streamer, the functional co-op structure is really good. I mean, I guess the difficulty would be the cost. It does cost more. I have much more overhead than most of my fellow streamers. But I think that will pay off in the long run because the people who are working on my project, this is their project too. And that gives them a stake. It gives them something to grow towards. It means that as we grow, they grow. We grow together, and there is a camaraderie and togetherness that is formed there, and a mutual accountability that is formed. And yeah, so I would say the difficulties are very minimal, and the joys are a lot. It feels very good to know that donations that come into my channel are helping multiple people, not just myself. Even though I do put in the vast majority of work for this channel, I am working on this almost every hour of almost every day in some capacity, whether it's just answering emails, being messaged at any time by members of the server or members of my team. I have stuff there's tasks that I do for this at multiple points through the day, even when I'm on days off. Even on days off, I still log in. I still do my YouTube work. I still reply to comments. I still post to my social media, show relevant stuff. It's a lot of work. But even with that, I like to know that it's good to know that we're in this together and I'm not alone in it, and the joys of it have been incredible. So I really recommend it. I think it's a very fulfilling structure. I don't think that co-ops are the one answer, but I do think that they are a considerable improvement over other structures. And they're definitely much better than just sort of the traditional contract labor. Even though on the sort of paperwork level, it is paid like via contract. The contract itself is based off of the percentages. Again, functional co-op. There's functionally
Right.
no difference besides the words that are said. And I think that's very, very important and very valuable. So yeah, at least for me, there hasn't been a whole lot of drawbacks to this sort of structure.
Yeah, what you've described is something that I've thought often about how content creation works on Twitch. Because it isn't so much just creating content and putting it out like in the YouTube sort of style, where
Hmm.
it's you work on a video, you edit it, and then you put it out. Where it's more, it seems like it's a group effort,
Hmm.
at least how I've seen it. Whereas the streamer, the person in front of the camera, just is the face person. They
Yeah,
are the personality that sells people into joining the Discord.
yeah.
Um,
And I do see
and
that in a certain way. Of course, like my involvement in this channel, streamers and YouTubers, I think, have a unique amount of involvement. When you used to
mm,
have like public access television or NPR, all of this, these people would have full teams behind them. They would never
yes,
touch a camera. They would have usually, I mean, if it wasn't radio, if it was TV, they would have a makeup team to do their makeup for them. And,
hmm
while sometimes my lovely partner does do my makeup for me, I love that when that happens. It's very nice. But that's not always the case. And I have to set up my camera and lights every single day myself. I have to manually do the audio. I do all of that. So I don't have a team like that. But
right,
it is true that my role is sort of as a the front demon. Yeah.
yeah,
So yeah. So
absolutely.
it's complicated, but yeah. So yeah.
All right. Well, we've got the introductory questions out of the way.
Hell yeah.
And I want to ask you, and this is kind of why I wanted to set this up.
Hmm.
I've watched many of your panel performances, and one constant I've seen is people have a visceral reactions to even your presence.
Yeah.
Do you think that's because most cis men are uncomfortable with confident women in the debate sphere?
I do think that's a part of it. This is something that I feel has sort of plagued me, and not just me, but many other of my fellow femme presenting content creators.
Mhm.
It is ridiculous almost how strong the double standard is, and this becomes especially apparent when you're engaging with like conservatives who really are more they wear their misogynist opinions on their sleeves, but it is very much present in leftist spaces. There are huge double standards that are put out. Cis male content creators in this space get away with so much that trans femme and femme content creators cannot even get close to. And it's so visible in the comments. Like, yeah, there is absolutely a certain reaction to that, but there's also just a general audience resistance as well. It's not just other content creators. A lot of audiences really have not moved out of this sort of boys club mentality. They're coming from, and some of it is because of Twitch is so involved in gaming, that there's this sort of gamer mentality of like, oh, the girls are the political gender is invading and whatever. It's very prevalent. It is, and if you talk to any femme creator, they will tell you they've had this experience. Even right-leaning femme creators
Yeah.
will admit to this. And I've been on multiple panels where this has been the case, and it's really, really unfortunate. It's something that is exhausting, that has required me cultivating a very thick shell, and it
Mhm.
is incredibly unjust. It's been hard to I've had to struggle with it a lot, and I know sometimes people don't see this part of it because I'm off stream usually, and I don't know. I sometimes talk about this sort of thing on stream, but usually I keep it to myself. And that is just like, it can be very draining to be very aware of the double standard and the things that you are not allowed to achieve because of who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is something that definitely exists, and I do think that's certainly a part of it. I think there are other things that play into it, but that is certainly a part of it.
You speak to these double standards. One of them that I've witnessed myself is that usually when a male debater begins to get loud to prove a point,
Uh-huh.
it's taken as strength.
Yeah.
When a woman debater gets loud, it's taken as fright or scaredness or even just ew, she's showing emotion.
Yeah,
Uh,
shrill, being a banshee,
right.
being
It
triggered, being an SJW, screeching SJW, get all the time. Nagging, yeah, Jazz Dog brings up nagging. Yep, there's a lot of
yeah.
them.
It
And
speaks
yeah, it
it
is.
speaks
Yep.
it speaks back to that idea of the hysterical woman in my mind. But are there any other double standards that stick out to you that you'd like to speak more on?
Yeah, one of the biggest double standards is one that I shout about on here all the time, which is the prevalence of often, sexually focused moral panics around trans women, trans
Mm,
femmes online. Trans femmes online are treated like utter garbage with regard to this. A dude streamer can be as vulgar and disgusting as they so desire. They can be as quote unquote degenerate as they so wish. But the moment a trans femme creator says a single sexual joke, oh, you're going to hear it for the rest of your life, and you do, all the time. And I've covered this covered specific instances of this on multiple times. There is a God, everything from like, I mean, I covered the career of Anna Valens, who's an amazing writer who gets
mhm.
so much shit for writing about sex online as a trans person, and it is her writings are tame in comparison to some of the stuff that cis writers get away with all the time. That's one of the biggest
Yeah.
double standards that I hate. You make a joke. I mean, you make a joke about a I don't know, about somebody fucking a sheep or something, some joke that's told. These types of jokes are told all the time by dude content creators, and much worse. Dude content creators especially make these will make the most just like sleazy jokes you can imagine, and nobody even bats an eye, and all of a sudden you're being problematic, or you're exposing children or something. It's ridiculous, and it's funny because like I've seen full on moral panics on social media, especially, that have been based off of this, that have been based off of someone making a throwaway comment. God, there was actually something I've saved in my bookmarks to talk about a bit later in this stream, that is a great example of this. Basically, the identical joke made by a medium-sized medium-sized account of a trans woman on Twitter, and then this almost exact same joke made by a cis dude who's doesn't have pronouns about nothing, and whose account is way bigger, and one of them just gets clapped, just endless positive comments, tons and tons of retweets and likes. The other person just gets this is problematic, oh, how can you say this, ugh. And it really is that much. It is that drastic. It's so
Yeah.
drastic. I want to bring people's attention to it because it's shocking how drastic that double standard is.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of the puritanical idea that a woman is supposed to be chaste. Um, I know, just to bring it into the arena that I'm very intimately familiar with, a situation that reminds me of this is Amy Schumer's comedy career. Um,
Yeah.
and Amy Schumer went on stage. She was very sex positive.
Mm-hmm.
Say what you want about her jokes. Um, but the main criticism that she got was, why does she talk about her vagina so much?
Yeah. Isn't that wild? As if dudes don't constantly make jokes about cocks.
Right, as if you don't go to any open mic anywhere and hear ten dick jokes. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's
Um,
total double standard. And it's so shocking that like it's almost galling to me that it still exists to this day to the degree that it does.
yeah, I find that's something that is very interesting to me because it seems so it's perpetual. It's a through line through history that you keep seeing, that women consistently have to push back against the idea that they must be chaste
Hmm.
and quiet and subdued,
And modest
um,
is another one.
and
And
modest.
polite.
Uh,
These are the things that are weaponized against not just women, but also queer people too. That's another thing that
yeah.
like, a dick joke in a gay framing is real bad, but a dick joke in a het framing is like right on, brother.
Oh yeah, it's the same for disabled people, you know.
Uh-huh.
I talk about my disability on stage, people cringe. Um,
Wild. Yeah.
so um, I guess this leads to our next question. Do you think that many debate streamers see the panel as kind of a man's only space, like a boy's space? Or to phrase it another way, do you think that someone like yourself challenges the public perception of what the strong debater is?
Yes. I absolutely think that's the case. Nobody will say it, but they absolutely, absolutely do. There is very much a boys club mentality, and it is reflected even in the faces that you see on panels. Although there has been improvement, of course. There are a number of really cool panel hosts who really do their best to change that. But it is a part of the space nonetheless. And yeah, I do think that I challenge the public perception of what a strong debater is, because I think that it lets people realize that passion alone is not worthy of disregarding someone's position or their argument. I like to deliver effective arguments passionately. And I think a lot of times what happens is a dude will deliver a passionate argument and it will be seen as, like you said before, a based strong moment. And then they will be listened to, and the core of their points. I mean, God, you see this. We were just covering Jimmy Dore, and the number of people who will bend over backwards for Jimmy Dore. Yeah, he's an asshole, but he speaks the truth. He's a firebrand, and all these things. And then it comes to me, and it's like, oh, she's a bitch, which is why I call myself a debate bitch all the time. Because yeah, sure, okay, you're a bitch too.
Yeah.
Good job. Now it must feel nice to have somebody step up to you and go toe to toe with you, which I know some people have had a lot of problems with.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, I've found that like when you do give these passionate rebukes, the chat tends to fire up, and I see
every time.
Yeah, I see one of two reactions, and that's either a lot of people getting indignant because you raised your voice, and a lot of people saying, well, she's right, but she delivered it the wrong way. Do you feel like that narrative of you're right, but you're doing it wrong, do you feel like that's a little bit harmful, or do you feel like that's just a side effect of people wanting to hear something more even-keeled?
I think there's a massive double standard in the sort of optics shit. Like, I mean, come on. Like, I have received endless. It become a meme on the channel that like the only people who call in to criticize me end up criticizing me about optics, quote unquote. And it's always this very vague notion of, oh, you should be nicer, you're alienating people. And then I go and I tune on to one of these other debate streamers, Vosh or Destiny or whatever, and they're like screaming at the top of their lungs, what a fucking idiot, this guy's a fucking brain dead subhuman, blah blah blah, and nobody fucking gives a shit. Yo, real quick, just gotta welcome in another raid. Dr. Heemed, the one and only Dr. Heemed, the Poggers Dr. Heemed, whose content I absolutely adore. Thank you so much for the raid. Welcome, Heemed Raiders. Please come over to the website, demonmama.com/live. You can sign in with Twitch onto our website, and you get all of our emotes when you come to the website. Plus, you get to hang out on the screen with all the imps. We're doing a deep dive interview on me by the wonderful Just Allen. So yeah, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the raid. Very, very happy to have you here. Come on over to the website. We'd love to have you on here. Pardon for the raid, welcome and whatever. But please continue.
Yeah, I guess you spoke about how people don't like it when they're met with that resistance. And one of the big criticisms I see thrown your way is that you talk too much, or that you don't respect other debaters' time. Do you think that that's a product of, as we talked about before in the conception of DemonMama, of streamers not wanting to be wrong, of feeling like they're infallible?
Yeah, I think that's a certain part of it. I mean, I think some of it is just sort of raw sexism. Like, this happens all the time. One of the things that I've noticed, not even on panels I'm on, but when I'm watching other panels where there's a femme content creator on that panel, they will get the exact same thing I do. Oh, you just talked for 20 minutes. And it's like been like 3 minutes. People grossly over-exaggerate how much women talk, and they under-exaggerate how much they themselves have talked, especially if they're dudes. That is something that is absolutely there. And I think there's a certain amount of it. You know, everybody kind of dunks on people who go on a long monologue. I'm a little bit long-winded. I talk a lot on certain things, but I like to be in depth. I don't think that I'm being frivolous or wasting people's times, but I'm always framed that way. It's literally on our debate bingo, because every single time I go into a debate, people accuse me of that. Every single time without fail. And we've timed them a couple times, and most of the time, I am not the greatest speaker. Recently, I did lose a single bet with counterpoints because I spoke more than he did in the first half, and we came up to be within about 3 minutes of one another over the course of a 3.5 hour panel. Technically, I did talk more than him, but not by much. But I get that every time, even when I don't. And I've timed this out multiple times to just do a mental health check and be like, am I losing it? Am I wrong here? And no, I am correct. People really overestimate how much I talk, and they do it to other women too. Yeah, it's unfortunate. And I hope that changes over time. I think it will, but we'll see.
Yeah, me too. I love the idea of a debate bingo card.
Yeah.
I love it for multiple reasons. One, because it's a way of cataloging this misogyny. It's like almost a misogyny checklist.
Yeah, it is. Yep.
But it's also a way of making people pay attention to the debate.
Yeah.
Can I ask, how many times have you gotten a blackout on that bingo card?
I don't know that we've ever gotten every single space, but we get bingo almost every single time. We have a randomized version, and somebody gets bingo every single time. It is so, like, people have gotten down the stereotypes of the panel debates to a T. It's wild. Yeah. And it's unfortunate, and it is draining, and it's part of the reason why I'm sort of like slowly backing away from doing more panels, just because it gets exhausting. It gets tiring to hear the same things over and over again. It does. It gets exhausting, and sometimes it just stops being fun. So
yeah, you've alluded throughout this entire interview the mental cost that this kind of content has on you. Would you like to expand on that at all? Just giving you the space to.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I can. There's been a lot that I've had to deal with regard to mental health. I think it's something that is under talked about. I think it's in general, not just for femme streamers, but for content creators in general. These platforms are not designed for humans. They're not designed for humans. They're designed for consumers, yes, but they're not designed to facilitate like sustainable human production. And they know this. They know that if a content creator, with very few exceptions, if a content creator burns out, there will be another one to step up and take their place. And so they just grind you harder and harder for more and more for less and less. And that can be very hard. And that's sort of like one of the mental struggles of the job in general, regardless of what type of content you're doing. But specifically in this type of content, one of the things I've struggled with the most is this and pardon me for using a term that's sort of overused these days, but this sort of mass gaslighting that can happen where if you piss off certain communities of note or size, a mythology can be created around you that completely differs from your perception of yourself. And not only that, but from your sort of record of yourself. And this is something I've had to struggle with a lot. I've been pretty open, though I'm still a little nervous about it and working on this myself. In talking about the fact that I have borderline personality disorder, which already comes with a lot of self-doubt and a lot of sort of socially related concerns about abandonment and whatever, and that absolutely applies here. But I'm not the only one. There's lots of other content creators who experience the same thing. I think it's just uniquely intense for me. But one of the things throughout my life, I've learned that like I have a hard time figuring out a sort of objective self-perception because I'm prone to either feel like, all right, fuck you, I'm doing whatever the fuck I want to do right now, or oh my god, I fucked up everything. And this type of work does not help with that at all, I will say. Yeah. I have had to develop a lot of I don't know, notes. I take a lot of notes. I journal a lot so that I have something that I can look back on and remind myself of what I said and what I thought and what I did, so that when I encounter this sort of like these counter narratives, I have facts that I can go look at. I mean, one of the best examples of this was I had a big falling out with a content creator, which we won't name because you know who it is, but whatever. And one of their fans at one point came on my show to debate me about this, and they would not. Even when I showed them the the literal YouTube page that showed that like I hadn't responded to this in 6 days, and there was like 7 videos or 5 videos or something along those lines that had been put out in that period of time. It was just, they couldn't overcome this narrative that this was like some kind of like ongoing two-way war. And I was like, no, like I sat silent, and the record shows that, but they don't care about the record. They care about preserving this mythology they have. This is very true with certain, it's very true with certain content creators, communities, where they will tell you things about yourself that you swear to God, it's not true. It can't be true. And you go and you look into it, and then it turns out it's not true. But then there's all these people who are constantly telling you, wait a minute, this is who you are. This is what you do. Recently, I had this frustration where I made a tweet about how I felt like a lot of times in a lot of the spaces that we're in, especially lately, people have been very, very unwilling to grant even the slightest bit of charitability to other people that, hey, maybe they just think about this issue differently and aren't necessarily bad. And the response that I got was an incredible amount of harassment that basically said, wow, why don't you look in a mirror sometimes? And I'm like, wait a second, like my entire content is being willing to debate basically anybody. I almost never turn down a debate ever. I don't think I can't even think of one that I've turned down. And I always try to engage and understand other people's positions and meet it with my own positions. And yet I have this reputation among certain circles that I'm like, all I do is scream this screeching SJW. They've put me in a box. They have a mythology that even the actual record, even though you can go watch my content and see that I have a playlist of self-critiques where I've spent dozens of hours on my stream live being critiqued by viewers, being critiqued by myself, being critiqued by other content creators that I publish openly and am willing to engage with, which is an exhausting process. They don't care. And so they tell you that you're this or you're that. And that, to tie this all back to the mental health, that is so taxing. It is very hard to deal with. And it's something I'm hoping to learn from, because I know that it's taken a toll on content creators much larger than me. ContraPoints and Lindsay Ellis are two notable examples of female content creators who have talked about this very openly, about the sort of false stories and false perceptions that are just totally distanced from reality, and it can be very hard to deal with. Sometimes I don't even know yet. I haven't figured it all out. So yeah.
Right. Yeah. I'm gonna ask one more question, and then
Absolutely.
if you need to go and get some water, because we have been going at this for about an hour.
I actually should
That's
refill my
completely
drink.
fine.
Yeah.
You talk of like when you say a meta, like the public perception of you, this publicized idea of these people's constructed view of you, would you say that makes it feel like it's almost like a doppelganger chasing you through the forest that is the internet?
Yeah. Sometimes yes. And especially with certain communities that are very insular, that have a strong echo chamber effect, that can absolutely happen. And I don't know what to do about that. I don't know how to diffuse that, and I don't know if there's a way to do it. Like, I think that a certain part of this work is just like learning how to filter feedback better, learning who you can listen to, who's a trustworthy source. And I also think, by the way, that this contributes to why a lot of people end up surrounding themselves with like yes men, so to say. That like a lot of content creators aren't like, because there's so much negative feedback, there's so much abuse, there's so much harassment, that they just end up looking for people who reaffirm them, and that can lead you to being in a worse echo chamber than you were before. But I really do try to push back against that, and surround myself with people who are critical of me. And I think that my team is very willing to engage in criticism of me and willing to call me out. There have been numerous public and private occasions where that's happened. But it is hard. There is times where I feel like there's this ridiculous it's funny that you call it a doppelganger because it is almost like that. When I think about how I'm portrayed there's a couple of notable pieces of content that talk about me where I think about the portrayal, and it literally looks like in my mind, when I think of that, when I'm like imagining what they're imagining, I don't see somebody who looks like me. Like they vaguely look like me, but they're talking about basically somebody else it is like a doppelganger. I'm really, it's interesting you chose that language. I guess I didn't really visualize it like that so much, but it does make sense to visualize it like that. And it is difficult. It is really hard. And I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know what I can do about that yet. And I don't know. Maybe my doppelganger would like to talk someday. Maybe we can remerge and become a stronger being or something. I don't know.
Yeah, hopefully y'all can work that out. In the meantime, it sounds like affirmations are helping.
Yeah, they do. It does. It like having people who are willing to like, and it's not even so much like affirmations of like, you're doing great, you're awesome, you're amazing. Right. Although that can certainly help, of course. Getting positive feedback is amazing. I love it. Of course, it's, I think any performer knows that you love getting that good feedback from people.
Oh, yeah.
But just like
I
even
love doing good set.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I'm talking about here. But like there is a type of affirmation that can come from people recognizing what you're saying. Like where I go and I say, look, I feel like I was aggressive in this panel. Yeah, maybe that's wrong. I feel like I messed up on this point, but I don't think that I did like a complete fuck up here. And somebody goes, yeah, I think that this was like an error in your approach or whatever, but you absolutely didn't like fuck it up. Like these people are saying. I think that can really help because it provides like a sanity check that like, no, like, this is going to touch on a weird thing, but there is and maybe this is, I don't know if this is a thing that people with depression or anxiety suffer with a lot, because I do know a lot of people are like this. But like there's this attempt sometimes, or this like passive desire to discover to try and understand exactly what everyone who says anything bad about you is saying, and understand why, like, oh, there must be something I'm missing in this. Like when you receive that negative feedback, that you like look to find the truth in it really hard. And like, maybe it's just like, I don't know where that comes from, but I've had to learn to actually dial that back, because while it has helped me in other areas of my life, like pushing myself to excellence or whatever, I don't think, I've found that online you can't do that. There are people who just straight up will not engage with you in good faith. They hate you. They've decided they don't even necessarily have good reasons besides the person that they like hates you. And if you try to do that, if you try to be like, okay, where's the truth in this? When somebody calls me a screaming SJW bitch, where's the truth in that? There's got to be some truth in it, right? No, that can be detrimental to your mind. You have to learn to tune it out to a certain degree. And it doesn't mean tuning out all critique. It just means learning to listen for critique that's actually valuable and not just irrational hatred. And it's also okay to recognize that some types of critique are just irrational hatred. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think this is a lovely moment for us to take a 5 to 10 minute break.
Yeah, sure.
I need to use the restroom.
That's fine. I'll put on the bathroom song, which I'm sure the imps will absolutely love.
I would really appreciate that.
Yeah, I'll put that on. I'll put on the bathroom song, and y'all, just know we will be back in just a couple of minutes. We're going to take a very brief bathroom break, and there's going to be a couple more questions after this, and then we got more awesome content afterwards. So stick around, stay in your seats, chat with people in the chat, post your emotes, and listen to the bathroom song. All right, I'm going to put it on right now. Wait a second. I have to put it on this computer because of the audio setup. Oh my God, I can't wait for that to be done. Holy moly, I can't wait for that damn change to be done. It'll be done this Friday, thank God, and I won't have to do this anymore. I have to keep climbing under my desk to change the audio. All right, let's put on the bathroom song. Let's do it.
All right, I'm going to step away. I will be right back.
Hell yeah. All right, enjoy it, everybody. I'll be right back.
DemonMama has to go to the bathroom, so listen to the DemonMama bathroom song. She streams 20-hour days and 9 days a week, so let's give her and her bladder a little fucking break. Okay, it's been a minute and she's still in the bathroom. I'm not a math whiz, but I can count to 2. Let's all calm down and spam emotes while we wait and chat. Maybe someone here also needs a bathroom break. It's been a bit since DemonMama went to the bathroom. Not like I'm counting, but this track's at 142. So don't you fret, my little lips, cause I wrote this track down to give you something boppin' while she's taking a break. Jesus fucking Christ, can Fawn go check in the bathroom? I hope she doesn't lock the door when she uses it. But if she does, you might need a little running start and hope the door hinge is weak enough to break.
All right.
Okay, you're just fucking with me now. Put down your phone, the stream is still running. I can only assume you forgot because you were doom scrolling. Jesus Christ, DemonMama, do we need to call a doctor? Song's over, stop. Somebody help her out. Hey chat, DemonMama has to go to the bathroom, so listen to the DemonMama bathroom
back.
song.
Thank you
She
very
streams
much for the
20
gifted
hour days and 9 days a
Hello,
week.
I'm
So
back.
let's give her and her bladder
I'm
a
back as
little
well.
fucking.
Hello.
Hello. All right, we ended the bathroom song. I hope you all enjoyed the bathroom song. I didn't fall down. I'm fine. It's just part of the song. It's the theming. Okay, it's fun. Thank you very much, Leah HCIC, for the gifted tier 1 sub. It means the world to me. Thank you so much. All right.
I really appreciate the ending of that song.
Yeah, isn't that
It
great?
makes me laugh every time I
Gay
hear it.
Fesh, an absolute champion.
Yeah, it's
absolute
amazing
god.
musician.
Yeah, truly. Yep. Well, Ziggy, just so you know, I reset the bot. If we ever get that, just poke me and I'll restart it. We're gonna switch over to a different bot for Twitch chat, but that's a big process, and I haven't done it yet. So yeah.
Do you have any more donos that you missed, or
I
any
don't
more
think so.
announcements
Let
you
me
need to
just
make?
double check and make sure that there's any that I missed. I don't. Oh yes, Hannah Thing, 5 gifted tier 1 subs. Thank you so much, Hannah Thing. That means the world to me. Thank you so very much. And that appears to be it. So
All right.
hell yeah, I think.
Very
Let me
cool.
just. Yeah, that looks like it's it.
All right. Very
Hell
cool.
yeah.
So before we took a break, we were talking a bit about the double standards within the debate community, and some of the effects of the misogyny that are inherent in that system on you and other femme presenting debaters. This is going to be a little bit of a tough question, but what do you think panel runners could do to help reduce the amount of harm and misogyny that women debaters tend to receive when on these panels?
There's a couple of things. One is they could make a better effort to discover and find and reinforce like femme talent. A lot of times now, some panel hosts do this better than others, but there is often just a sort of passive, well, you know, we just find who we find, and you know, they just so happen to find lots of dudes, and then that's the panels, and that's how the panels go, and ends up being one femme presenting person and 9 guys, and that could be pretty uncomfortable. And so that like actively diversifying panels, it is good for multiple reasons. First of all, it's more entertaining for the audience. There are a lot of women in these spaces, even if they're not very vocal because of the way that chats go. But there are a lot, and they like to see, you know, women like to see they like to see some representation on those panels. But also it just means that, you know, you're not going to be singled out as the only femme person on that panel that everybody can go harass afterwards. Also, of course, I mean, some of it is beyond panel hosts. A lot of this is stuff that needs to be tackled on the website's culture. Websites like Twitch and YouTube need to take firmer stances against like harassment campaigns, which are huge problems and almost always directed at femme content creators. Like unbelievably, we all know about Gamergate. We all know about all of this stuff. These years and years of long campaigns that are directed predominantly against female content creators. But yeah, panelists really can do a better job. And the other thing that they can do is that they can grant like their platform when these people do get hurt. You know what I mean? And some of them do this, but not always. If one of their panel guests goes on to like engage in like extreme harassment against another, like a femme panel host, or like in the case of mine, I'm very happy to say that you know, Dylan banned that Tyler Bluntman asshole off after, but that guy still harasses me. When I was on, I went on a random debate podcast, and he was sending like disgusting super chats in against me, and it's just like, you know, it was nice that Dylan was willing to say, nah, fuck this guy. This guy's engaged in disgusting trans-focused harassment against one of my panel hosts. They're gone. We're not going to bring them back. And that is something good. And I think that if more panel hosts made that a part of their standard, like saying, okay, we're not just going to sort of shut our brains off when the panel's over, and we've made our money, but rather we're going to go here and we're going to look in the big picture and make sure that our talent is able to be safe and whatnot. That would make a big deal, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I'm seeing here, and this is kind of a light bulb going off in my mind right now, but the debate panels, the way that they're run is almost like professional wrestling promotion companies.
Yep.
You brought up protecting your talent. Do you think that maybe forming some sort of loose, I almost want to say, union of debaters, with that, do you think that would help with, you know, the bargaining power between the panels and the talent that are there?
In some ways, I think it would. I think the structure has its heart in the right place. But as it stands, I think that the Twitch panel scene and the YouTube political panel scene is just too disorganized for anything like that to work. No one is paid for anything. It's all just for exposure. It's exposure. Everybody is, including panel hosts, are contract workers for Amazon or for Google, depending on which site you stream on. So I don't know. I don't know if that structure would actually work. I think the problem is that, like, even if you set it up, like, I don't know that there would be enough opportunities to even do anything about it. It really has to be, unfortunately, as it currently stands, I think it is a bit of a more individualistic approach that has to be taken, in that panel hosts and viewers need to hold their panel hosts to task if possible, and panel hosts need to build structure into their shows. But honestly, labor in the state of labor in Twitch and YouTube streaming is so dreadful. It's actually it's nightmarish to even talk about. It's just everybody is a contractor, no matter how big your channel is, and you can be erased functionally in a moment's notice, and there's nothing you could do about it. So we are in a very disadvantageous position, which means that, like, as a result of that, because everyone's in such a disadvantageous position, there's not a whole lot that the talent that's going on panels can do. A lot of times these panels might be your only shot at exposure. It's very unfortunate, but I don't know what the solution is there. I wish I had more. I wish I could say more. I haven't figured that out yet.
Yeah, that's just a thought that occurred to me. Yeah. I mean, I guess the only real answer to that is, you know, that's the gig economy, baby.
Yes, it is. Yep. Yeah.
I completely blanked on the next thing I was going to ask
That's
you.
okay.
It's all right. You already answered this next question. So we're just going to skippity-doo-dah on past that one.
Hell yeah.
Oh, that's what it was. Do you think that like maybe a restructuring of the TOS for some of these companies would be effective in fixing this problem? Because you're talking like I hear you talking a lot about the chat,
Uh-huh.
and outside of a very strong moderation team, there's just not much the content creators can do about
Mhm.
that, unfortunately. Um, so where my gaze goes is the TOS. Do you think that needs to be restructured at all?
Yeah, I think the TOS could use a lot of restructuring, particularly on Twitch. Twitch's TOS is, in my opinion, incredibly difficult to work with. And it, and I know that this is not an intentional outcome by Twitch, but they empower harassers. The reason
Mhm.
is that, the reason that this is the case is because, Twitch's TOS, because they don't because they have such broad categories for bans and for what is in violation of the TOS, you just get an email that says you did this, and there's no evidence. They have no requirements to provide you with a clip, and that just means that a lot of it is just automated. There's no actual people looking at it. And so with a broad TOS and no actual, like, very, very small human moderation teams, harassers know that they can pick an out of context moment and they can report the shit out of that VOD, or report the shit out of that moment, and then they can get your channel fucking hit. And it can kill a career. We recently saw this with Anatomics, who, to my knowledge, has not yet had her show restored. And this is exactly how broad, unclear TOSs can be weaponized by bad actors, and it can become almost impossible for a smaller content creator to even get their voice heard when they've been wrongfully terminated. Xanderhall's another one. There's a lot of people who've been wrongfully hit. I mean, our channel has been wrongfully hit, and
Right.
I think YouTube is doing its best to sort of refine the TOS, but at the end of the day, the TOS is always refined in the favor of corporations and not in favor of the talent. And I do think that changing the TOS would be better. I think Twitch could go a long way by making the TOS clear and committing to actually providing real evidence for why they're issuing a ban, especially if it's going to be an indefinite ban. There should be no reason why any channel should be indefinitely banned without evidence of why and where they violated, so that that channel can improve. The TOS doesn't help people create content. In fact, in the case with Anatomics, she had received an email just a week prior saying that her channel was on the correct path to reach partners. She just needed to reach higher viewers, but her content was looking great. Now, of course, we all know this is automated, but how can a corporation send you a message that says you're doing everything right and then indefinitely ban you from the platform within a week? That's just unbelievable to me.
Yeah.
And it makes talent less willing to genuinely make content, and also puts them in an incredibly dangerous position. I think it damages the platform as a whole, and I think it would be in Twitch's favor to clear up, to like refine the TOS, make it clear, and introduce a at least relatively large human moderation team, and I bet the website would get so much better so fast.
Yeah, yeah. You know what the TOS kind of reminds me of is the way that the American legal system is understood on a layman level.
Yeah.
You know how they teach you the bare minimums of laws before you go out into the world as adults, whereas laws such as a car technically can't be in the crosswalk, or else that's against the law.
Right.
You can get pulled over for that. Nobody tells you that's a law. They just expect you to know it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It feels like being a content creator is much of the same experience, only you know, it's such a disconnected kind of idea of knowing what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah.
So it's interesting you say that.
I mean, I do think that's true. So much of this is like, so much of what I've learned and been able to accomplish has been, through communication and experimentation with other content creators, not through communication with the platform that is imposing these rules on us. We have to learn from each other. It's, yeah, it's a sad state of affairs. Again, YouTube is a little bit better, but they have their own drawbacks as well. And the way YouTube gets around this is because they'll just demonetize individual videos that they don't like. But that's much better than getting your channel banned. So,
Right.
yeah.
Throughout this interview, you've talked a lot about like the performance of debate. And I know in my life, when I'm getting ready to go on stage, I have my own little performance routine. I go into the bathroom and I have a small anxiety attack, which is mildly helpful. Um, would you mind walking us through like your preparation process before stepping into this hostile form of entertainment?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, like I have sort of my daily schedule that I kind of do, which is like, I get my makeup done like an hour before stream starts. I get all the streaming nonsense, turning on the camera, turning on the lights, getting the OBS up and running, getting all of the routing for, the titling of the stream and everything like that done. Excuse me.
Bless
Pardon
you.
me. I do that sort of thing. And usually what I'll do is, a big part of it is like on the morning of, almost every morning, before I do a stream, I go sit on the back porch of my house and I look out at Mount Rainier and I have a smoke and I just take a little bit of time to, really just drift, mentally and just think about all kinds of things and let me have like a time where nobody who I don't want can interact with me, where I can just sit there and watch the trees sway in the breeze and watch the clouds move and enjoy something that I enjoy very much, which is a clove cigarette, and or maybe depending on the day, some weed or something like that, and that's a part of it for sure, and and then of course I try to make sure that I have a document. My document is I've mentioned this before that I do a pre-stream document. Usually I will do that a day in advance or the morning, or like put finishing touches on the morning of, depending on the level of complexity of the stream that I'm going on. Having those documents is incredibly helpful. Sometimes it's as simple as like today I had I had at the top, okay, here's it's very simple. Date, stream, title, which is the History Mama, Magnus Hirschfield, and then everything else. And then I put a title that said interview with Just Allen. And then I copy pasted all and formatted all of the questions into this document. And then I will usually have a little section in my document where I type in notes. And then those notes, I can put questions that come from the audience that I want to remember, things that people tell me during stream that I want to put elsewhere. And this document serves as sort of a backbone that I can always go back to and refer to. And then, of course, people have seen me many times during my debates. I write in this little black notebook. And this is for little off-the-cuff things while I'm in the stream, because it's a little bit easier to take physical notes when you're in the middle of a debate, for me, even though I don't usually like taking physical notes for everything. And this is a really nice way for me to just jot down things so I don't forget them in a debate. And having these tools on hand and knowing like how to use them is greatly reassuring. It makes me feel a lot stronger. Because I know that I have a thing there. I know that I have a thing there that makes me it's like having your sword at your hilt, sort of. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds very grounding.
Yeah, it's grounding. It is. Yeah. And there's definitely times where I've been really, really anxious, and whatnot. But for the most part, I try to take a lot of time off stream where I think about things and I think back on things, and I talk to my partners and my friends about things, and I get different perspectives on it. And of course, I try to make sure I get a lot of sleep, because that's really important.
Absolutely,
that's something that I used to not be good at, and recently I've finally figured out in the last like 2 years how to get like a proper night's sleep, and it does help with anxiety quite a lot. And then usually after stream, I have a sort of, after a lot of streams, especially contentious streams, I tend to have sort of like a mood drop, where immediately after the stream, there's just sort of this feeling of just like, whew, like I feel, like all the serotonin has been sucked out of my body or whatever. And, so,
It's that post stage release.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't know if it doesn't really always feel good, but it's like
Yeah.
it's almost like almost unavoidable. And I try to really just take time for myself during that, whether it's to lay down and just not necessarily like go to sleep or anything, but just think, or to smoke some weed with my partners or something like that, where I can just think back on everything, process it, and sort of let it go for the night. And I think that's a very important thing, especially when there's high contention. Believe it or not, despite all of my willingness to engage in debate, it can be incredibly, incredibly draining and incredibly emotionally impacting at times.
Yeah.
Even if you don't see it in the show, it definitely sticks there afterwards. So I do my best to, I literally film this in my house. So to not take work home with you is impossible. It is always there. But yeah.
Yeah, you talked a bit about like giving yourself these moments to let your mind drift.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find that these moments of private introspection give you a clarity to why you continue to do this and why you enjoy it?
Oh, absolutely, for sure. I'm a bit in the school of David Lynch, in that I don't think that I would be able to do any of this without having time to dream, so to say.
Yeah,
It is
absolutely.
so important, and sometimes that literally just manifests as literally just sitting in a quiet room and thinking about lots of things, or listening to music and thinking about lots of things, or playing an instrument, or and other times it's getting really lost in like a very complex video game that can put my mind to something that's a very different skill set. It's definitely, someone in chat here, VM Draco, says, is it sort of like meditation? Yeah, it is a bit like meditation. And I'm very, I don't really do formal, like, sit on the ground on a mat meditation. But I do a lot of mindfulness practices, where I think about how I'm feeling in the moment, why I'm feeling that way. And those things can really help quite a lot. But still human. There are times where it's overwhelming and I can't get out of it, or I can't get out of the headspace. So.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. You also talked about the post-stream lull.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that I can really compare that to is after I get off stage, I am very much numb.
Yeah.
Like, I remember describing it to my therapist as, it's very hectic before I get on stage. When I'm performing, it's just disassociation. I
Yeah.
leave my body and it delivers the material. And then I get off stage and I'm just like, what just happened?
Yeah, that can
Um,
happen sometimes too. Like I would say that there have been moments like that for
yeah,
me as well, where I feel like it's almost like my mind isn't like I come. It's like I've gone into some sort of weird channeling state where I'm like channeling a mood or something.
right.
And it is sort of, it does, I guess it is a form of dissociation. I think that that used to happen a lot more frequently. Earlier on in streaming. Now, not so much, but there are absolutely moments where that's the case. Extremely contentious debates or confrontations. I've had ones like that where I'm just like, I get to the end and I'm like, where was I for the last hour?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yep.
that's very interesting to me. Uh, how do you find that you combat that sort of disassociation to stay mindful of what you're doing when you're doing it?
A lot of it has been practice of just
Hmm.
like, honestly, this is going to sound terrible and nobody should find this particular outlet. But, honestly, like since I started smoking on stream, it actually, don't do this. Find another way, something else, something healthier. But it engages with enough of my senses, like the sensory stuff, that it almost pulls me back into the moment, where I'm like, okay,
Right.
wait, I'm here. I'm tasting the flavors of the thing. I'm feeling the smoke. I'm feeling my breath. I'm here in the moment.
Mhm.
And that can help a lot. I think there are other things that can be done that can do that. And I do think that at the end of the day, I will enjoy it more when that's the case. But there are times where that can't happen. There are moments where the intensity gets so high that you just have to go into, I don't know, instinct mode, ultimate instinct. If we're gonna go Goku, but yeah, I mean, there's moments like that where, and I do think that helps. That has helped. And I hope to find in the long term, a healthier solution.
Yeah.
But for now, the occasional smoke really does, at least for me, help ground me in the moment. And because a lot of this is it's so digital, there's all these screens and it's all moving text that it can be very easy to lose yourself in it, and not always in a good way. Yeah. So.
Yeah, the ones and zeros can have an effect on you
For sure. I mean, there's that weird effect of just like being surrounded by windows that let you see into other things, and you forget that you're a fleshy being that's sitting in a chair and is being watched and looked at and engaged with. And yeah, I think it's important. I'm sure there are other ways that I can go about it, and I'm sure I'll get there someday. But for now, this works.
Right. I mean, I've often said one of the curses of this world is this corporeal form. So I definitely vibe with what you're putting out there. And this comes up to one of our final questions, which, speaking of hostile forms of entertainment and this anxiety-ridden process that goes along with it, I've seen a lot of people say that debate in its current form is very gladiatorial or akin to blood sports. Do you feel like there's a need to return to the, quote, spirit of debate, where it's two people on opposite ends of an idea trying to come to an understanding of that idea through argument?
That's a tough question. Online debate is super blood sporty and super gladiatorial. I've always recognized that. I openly brand myself as a bit of a pit fighter. And I think that it's better when people recognize that that's the case, especially on like panels. There's no semblance of like the spirit of debate on a panel. It just doesn't almost never happens. I do think that there is great value in the spirit of debate, where two people are coming to an understanding. But that is hard to attain because it requires two participants who are on the same page to some degree. And it's just a simple fact that we are in a very strange political time where there's an increasing gap. There's an increasing schism between basic understandings of the world. And I think there's always been that to some degree, but consensus on like certain things feels to me like it's worse than it's ever been. There is no consensus on what makes truth anymore. There is no consent, and not that there's ever been hard consensus. Nobody's ever agreed this is how we find the truth, this is how we proceed. There's always been differences. But I mean, right now we're dealing with a country that simultaneously has some states that are passing like sweeping historic trans healthcare legislation in favor of trans people, and other states that are literally putting in segregational laws against trans people. And that is a level of like polar opposites and just totally different worldviews. And of course, obviously, there's a particular culprit. Things like Newsmax and Donald Trump and Fox News, these sources that have no regard for truth whatsoever. They don't even have a basic regard for how you gather truth or how you even understand truth. There's no skepticism. There is just mindless repetition of whatever the status quo claims is correct. And that is very hard to overcome sometimes. So we're in for blood sports. Blood sports is going to be in our future for a lot of it, and we need to learn how to make that blood sports as productive as possible. I do think that people should be more open to true debate. And this is something, I mean, a great example of this is the conversation I had recently with Neo Moirai, which it just went up on my channel a couple of days ago. I had this debate about different conceptions of gender, and it was amazing. It was a great conversation. And, it wasn't big fanfare, fireworks, blood sports. There wasn't a lot of drama or fanfare around it, but it was a very valuable discussion. but it was only possible because we had some common ground. There was a
Right.
there was a sort of agreement on the idea that, yeah, like you can talk about things and come to truths. And even if you don't necessarily convince me in this conversation, it will give me something to think about. When you're going up against somebody who believes that the election was a hoax and that there's a cabal that's pulling the strings, you can't reach that. You can't reach that shared consensus. And so the conversation always occurs in bad faith. And in a bad faith conversation, the most vicious fighter is going to win.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're talking a lot about at least what I'm hearing a lot about what I'm vibing with that statement is the conversation of misinformation and talking about getting two people who are willing to have a conversation in good faith. Do you feel like part of the reason why it's so hard to find two people who have a deep understanding of a topic, at least a deep enough understanding of a topic to hold it up into the arena of debate? Do you feel like that's hard to find because of the misinformation that is out there?
I definitely think that's a part of it. But honestly, I think that people, even people who aren't like super deeply informed on an issue, can actually have a very productive, useful, and informative discussion or even debate about it. I don't know that like the expertise of the participants is necessarily the main problem. I think that there is just totally different end goals and worldviews and assumptions about reality that block a lot of meaningful debate from happening. Again, the right-left divide right now is probably the most obvious one, where like even if we're like go by the broadest definitions of both right and left, there is a stark line in the middle. Even liberals and neoliberals at least have some acknowledgement of like, okay, yeah, humans are feeling things and that matters. Like humans have a life to live, and like they shouldn't just be, fodder for war. But on the right, there is this mentality of complete hierarchy, that there are people who belong on the bottom and there are people who belong on the top, whether it's God's chosen, whether it's might makes right, whether it's the law has bestowed this on us to put order into place. And that is
Right.
that line is so sharp that I think that a lot of times it means that there is very little hope for middle ground finding. And it's also part of what informs my approach, that I don't much care for winning over right-wingers. Even though I came from a right-wing background, it wasn't debate that got me out of it. It was my own personal journey of inquiring, of looking deeper, of meeting people in my social life, in my personal social life, who challenged my views and my assumptions about the world. It wasn't like watching debates on the internet that broke me out of indoctrination. Those things bounce off you when you're indoctrinated. When you're indoctrination is designed to make that type of thing bounce off of you. And so my goal with debate is not really to try and like win over the right wingers or win over the right leaning centrists. My goal in debate is to stimulate people's thoughts, to start to catalyze the process that I think leads people to make meaningful change, by getting them to think deeper about a subject, by introducing ideas they've never had contact with that might induce some level of cognitive dissonance that makes them sit up at night and go, what the hell, this thing is bothering me, I need to figure this out. Because
Right,
those were the
yeah.
sorts of things that did it for me.
Absolutely. Like you talk a lot about not so much bridging the divide between the right and the left, and more exposing people to different worldviews that they might not be willing to listen to otherwise.
Yeah.
I've found that in my experience that, much like yourself, debate isn't what brought me to leftism. I grew up in a very small town in Florida, and it was very rural. And the thing that got me out of it was, like I think most people, being exposed to people that you probably weren't exposed to in your general existence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
do you feel like this? Do you feel like that's something that you do effectively?
I think that's very hard to determine. I like to think I do.
Yeah.
I like to think I do. I get a lot of feedback that seems to indicate that I do.
Right.
I mean, there have been some segments and some debates and some things that where I've gotten just so much positive feedback that was like, wow, one of the best examples of this was Kink at Pride. I'm so happy that I decided to do DemonMama's ironclad take on Kink at Pride. That segment, I cannot even tell you how many comments I got where people said, I completely changed my perspective on this thanks to your video. Like, this video totally changed the way that I looked at this. I had never even thought about it from that perspective, and it totally changed my position on it. So many. I got so much feedback. It was thrilling to me to know that people were being affected positively by that hell shit mess that happened.
Yeah.
But it did. And I think the approach that I took there was one of determined but kind agitation in a direction that got people thinking, and it couldn't get out of their minds. You know what I mean? It put a little brainworm in that made that they had to go and go, well, why do I think about it that way? It annoys me. And then they go and figure it out.
Right.
And I like to do that. I want to do that more. And it's an art that I'm developing. I don't think I'm like the best at it yet. I think there are some places where I am good at it, and others where I'm not. But I think I've had some, worthy successes on that front.
Absolutely. I think that you have a very interesting style when you do stuff. Your Kink at Pride video is a very good example of this, where you took more of the role of a teacher. And we're coming up on the last question, and this is a secret question that has nothing to do with what we've talked about.
Oh, sick.
But this is me kind of putting a bow on this conversation real quick.
Yeah.
That goes back to you speaking at the beginning of this conversation about edutainment and how you want to reach out to people. And I think it's amazing that you get feedback like that. That's one of the things that I really enjoy hearing from streamers, is when they get those messages of I never thought about it that way.
Yeah. It's one of the most
feel
motivating things for me personally. To hear that,
that's what
to
I
know.
was getting to.
Yeah.
I've had moments like that on stage where someone will come up to me after my set and go, your joke about blank made me think about this in a different way. That's really cool. Do you feel like that makes you excited to turn your camera on, or motivates you in a way that is maybe just more raw?
Oh, for sure. That is probably that sort of thing is probably one of the most the biggest motivations that gets me excited, that keeps me motivated and excited for making content, is the idea that today, I know from just seeing the reactions in chat that Magnus Hirschfield segment is going to really enlighten some people, and that story is going to disperse. From the imps are going to tell other people about it. They're going to have that in their head, and I am so pleased by that, because and that is this morning I was really I can even talk about this this morning. Something happened this morning. This morning I woke up, I was super fucking tired. I was kind of out of it. I'm kind of just oh wow, am I going to be able to muster up the energy to pull off a stream today? And and I was just sitting out there on the back porch smoking and looking at the mountains and everything like that, and just thinking, and I'm like, wow, but this is a big deal. This is something that could really affect a lot of people. And this story affected me. I know how much I've thought about the story of Magnus Hirschfield and all this. And so it did. It got me to get everything all put together. It got me to turn on the camera, to power through that little feeling of oh boy, can I pull it together today? Can I get all my focus in place, or am I going to zone out? And I didn't. And it was very much the knowledge, the hope that somebody was going to walk away from my stream knowing more about a piece of history that I was deprived of for most of my life. That got me, to do that. So yeah, it is very, very viscerally important to me. And hearing that feedback from fans, from imps and beyond is a huge part of the sort of emotional fuel. That, and of course, to just mention other things that do that for me. When I log onto my Discord server and I see that there's multiple people in the voice chats chatting with each other and building actual friendships. When I tune in yesterday, I tuned into my mod AMA for a little bit just to listen, and I heard these mods talking about the friends that they've made, the actual connections, the projects that they've been working on with each other as a result of this space being facilitated. Oh my God, is that the life fuel right there? That shit.
Yeah.
I've talked about this before, but one of the first like moments where I was like, this was my motivation, like liquid. It was like liquid motivation, was this one time that I popped into the server and I saw there was a whole bunch of people, and I was feeling real bad. And I just saw there was a ton of people on the Discord servers. One of the first times I saw a whole bunch of people gathered in the voice channel, and I just popped in just to listen. And immediately, the moment I turned on my audio, I could just hear people laughing their asses off together. It sounded like I stepped into a bar in the middle of like somebody telling a great story. And it was so cool. It was so cool. And it made me realize like, oh, wow. Like in all of the hardship and all the nonsense that's going on in the world, there's a little pocket here of people that are laughing and having a good time with one another. And, that's the shit that makes me turn on the camera every day. So
Fuck yeah, that's fucking beautiful. Like
Yeah.
I love that you were able to open up. I love the analogy of it's like a bar. Because I like to think of Discord as very much the same thing. And it's these loose support structures that you can make some really, really meaningful friendships with.
yeah,
Uh,
I try to challenge my viewers to reach beyond the parasocial, because I do believe that like through tools like Twitter sucks, but even through tools like Twitter, Discord especially, you can build meaningful and real social friendships. Not just I've seen this person's name, but I know things about them. We're friends. We know about each other's lives. We can help each other. If you live near each other, you might be able to. But I mean, fuck, like I've met people online who at one point lived in a different country than me, and now I've seen them. I've hung out with them. I hang out with them every weekend. Because they just, by the way that life went, our paths converged and we were able to help each other and take care of each other. It's amazing. That's so amazing. Yeah. And like, I want that. And I always try to encourage people to make those connections. Because what I can do is I can facilitate a space. I can build the barn that everybody hangs out in. I can build the inn that everybody hangs out in. That's what my skill set is for whatever reason or another through whatever paths got us here. But I want to encourage people to start talking to each other, to drag those tables together and have a meal together or whatever. And it's happened. And it makes me very happy. So yeah. I guess that's what I would wrap that up on.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it to death. Now brace yourself.
Okay, I'm ready for the bonus question.
Here comes the secret question.
Secret question.
You,
All right.
you have been spuriously misquoted by myself as saying that ska is the music of the revolution. Would you care to back that up?
I think that ska is awesome, and your passion for ska has unironically introduced me to more ska. So you have sent me songs that I've enjoyed, specifically the original ska version of the Pressure Drop.
Two from the Maytals.
Yeah, exactly. Which I was familiar with the Clash version, the Clash version, but I'd never heard the original, and now that is on my playlist. So that was you who did that. So
yeah,
thank you.
If I could give you another suggestion,
please, I'll put it right now.
Check out. Yeah, everyone in chat even should go check out We Are Union, or We Are the Union. They are a trans-fronted ska band.
Oh my god, that's so pog.
The lead singer is gorgeous.
That makes me so excited. I will listen to this tonight.
Yeah, they are amazing. But to wrap this up, I just want to say thank you so much for allowing me to hold this guerrilla podcast. I really appreciate you giving me the time and the space, and I really enjoyed this conversation with you. This was very enlightening. Thank you so much.
The pleasure has been all mine, Just Alan. Truly. Thank you. These are such fantastic questions. I am so looking forward to seeing where you go. As you know, I'm a very big fan of interviews and skilled interviewers. And I think you are absolutely a skilled interviewer. Thank you so very much for taking the time to ask me all these really thoughtful questions. It makes me feel real good, and thank you so much. You want to give yourself a quick shout out so that everybody can go follow your channel?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm at Just Alan on YouTube, on Twitter, on Twitch. I don't really put out much on those channels, though this will go up on my YouTube ASAP.
Hell yeah.
I'm very active on Twitter. Go and laugh at my silly bathroom thoughts.
Well, I'm happy. I'm not the only one who's very active on Twitter. I'm always on Twitter, always following the IMPS code.
Yeah, always.
Well, Just Alan, thank you so very much. That was a truly wonderful experience for me, and thank you for gracing me with your interview talent.
Thank you so much. I hope you all have a lovely night and enjoy the rest of your stream.
Much love. Bye for now.
Bye.
That was awesome. That was so awesome. Wow. God, that was a good interview. That was such a good interview. I'm so happy with that. Oh my goodness, that was wonderful. Wow.
I wanted to end this with a rounding off of my thoughts on this conversation, a short-ish recap, if you will, which will be difficult. We had, I think, almost an over 2 hour long conversation. There's a lot there. So I guess what I'm going to start with is, from what I understand, is that not only is everyone who is involved in this project incredibly invested in the DemonMama stream, but also that there's a conversation to be had for debate panels, those who run them and those who participate in them, about the power dynamics involved and the mirrors of the more, for lack of a better term, anti-human behaviors that society at large holds. I hope that this can serve to maybe help that conversation along, or to start, or whatever is going to happen with it. And above all else, I hope you enjoyed listening to this as much as I enjoyed making it. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you have a lovely day.